Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, episode number 163, Lifeforce, the classic 1985 British science fiction horror film. With me tonight to discuss this blast from the past as we go into Halloween month at full thrust, as we have officially started Halloween month, as today is October 7th, 2022. Is my friend, my co-host, the one and only Mr. Ross Amico. Hey, Ross, welcome.
Hi, Roy. Thanks. We're finally going to do the Patrick Stewart film. You should have said starring Patrick Stewart.
Yeah. You beat me to the punchline, Ross. I was going to say, Lifeforce. Isn't that the film with Patrick Stewart?
Yeah, exactly.
which is actually what led us to actually do this film, because it has been an ongoing joke probably over the last year and a half, where this movie would actually come up inadvertently, and I would always say, yeah, isn't this the film with Patrick Stewart? Meanwhile, Mathilda May was actually in this film, and pretty much everybody remembers this film because of Mathilda May, because of her presence in this film. I'll leave it at that.
But you being trapped in your latency stage. Oh yeah, Captain Picard's in that. Yeah.
What are you saying, Ross? Hey, I want to welcome our viewers, and also, folks, just as a reminder, we are actually broadcasting on not only Facebook, we are broadcasting on YouTube as well as Twitter. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time out, if you haven't already, to please subscribe, or if you have subscribed, again, thank you for doing so. Again, there is no cost associated with subscribing to the show. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate the likes on Facebook and the follows on Facebook, and we very much appreciate the subscriptions to YouTube as well as Twitter. And with that said, I see Christian is joining us. Christian, welcome to the show. Christian is actually joining us from Canada. Welcome, Christian. I see Bill is joining us. Hey, Bill, thanks for joining. And Bill is joining us from Harmony, New Jersey, and he's also joining us via YouTube. Great to see you out there, Bill. And also, I see Martin is joining us. Welcome, Martin. Martin is joining us from New York. And again, Christian, great to see you as well. I also see David Franchior. David, I apologize. I'm so bad with names. But anyway, thanks for joining us. Much appreciated. And Liz is also joining us from the UK. Welcome, Liz. Great to see you out there. And I see Don Bethman is joining us from Delaware. Welcome, Don. Hope you're doing well tonight. Brennan is joining us also tonight. Welcome, Brennan. And I also see there's a Facebook user out there saying good evening. I'm not sure who that is, but welcome to the show. We appreciate you being out there. If you want to identify yourself, please do. And I'm wondering if it is actually, oh my goodness.
There it is.
Yeah, and there's Matt. Hey, Roy, why do you force me to watch this?
He watched it in The Mask too. You know he did.
I'm sure he did. Welcome, Matt. Good to see you out there as always. Facebook, YouTube, VHF, and Ship to Shore Radio. Thanks for joining us. Colin is joining us also from the UK. Welcome, Colin. Great to see you out there. And Jennifer is joining us from down south. Jennifer, welcome to the show. Good to see you out there, as well as everyone else. Brendan is saying, I came to Hocus Pocus too, and am I on the wrong website? Whoops. Well, you might be, Brendan, but I'm glad you're out there, so welcome. And thanks for the Fraker. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that, David.
Yeah.
And Randy Lee. Yes, Randy. I don't know why your name doesn't come up, Randy. Thanks for joining us. I wasn't sure if it was you, so but glad to see you're out there. And then also I'm seeing that Jeff Rubel is joining us from out west. Welcome, Jeff. Great to see you there. And Christian is saying, I'm a big fan of George Thorogood and the Delaware Destroyers. Big influence on my playing. Very cool. Well, wonderful to see everybody out there. We really appreciate your viewership. And yeah, we're very excited to talk about this as we are officially in Halloween month. And we have a lot of stuff planned for the month. But let's get started and talk about Lifeforce. Ross. I'm going to hit you with this fresh out of the gate. Did you see this movie when it first came out, and do you remember seeing this movie when it first came out?
Oh, absolutely. I saw it when it first came out, and how could I forget it? I actually thought it would be better than it was, though, at the time. But you know what? Interestingly, going back and watching it now with a little trepidation, I went back and watched it because it's become kind of a running joke on this show. I actually enjoyed it more this time than I did back in 1985. I was like, oh my God, what am I watching back in 85? Now I'm like, oh my God, what am I watching? Back then it was, what am I watching bad? Then now it's like, what am I watching good? You know, it was...
What happened, Ross? Where
I got old. Well, now I can kind of pick up on some of the influences and just totally, dig the trash. How about you? When did you see it?
I saw this when it first came out. I saw it in 1985. Interesting enough, this movie was released on June 2nd, or 21st, actually, of 1985. It was released on the first day of summer. And I can't say that I actually saw it on that day, but I do remember going to see it. I don't remember I don't remember if I was on a date when I saw it. Yeah. I don't remember if it was with friends. I don't have any recollection of it, but what I do remember is kind of like what you were saying. Well, let me say this. I think I said this to you earlier in the week. I said, this is the movie. This was made to be spectacular, but was not spectacular. It was a spectacularly made film that just wasn't spectacular. I mean, and in 1985, when I actually saw this film, I was like, what the heck? I mean, it was just a letdown. And I actually, like yourself, enjoyed it more this go around than I did back in 1985. So I can honestly say that.
A couple of dirty old men.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, well, what happened was, I was excited to see it because I knew that the working title was The Space Vampires.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so disappointed they changed the title, because who wouldn't want to go see a movie called Space Vampires? I would have been so there. And I think audiences would have been primed for what to expect had they gone into a movie called,
right,
Space Vampires, instead of trying to set it up as like, oh, this is going to be a scary movie and look at this unblinking eye looking over the earth, where it was just like a pulpy, wallow. And also at the time, Patrick Stewart was in everything at that point. He may not have been known, as widely as he was after Star Trek: The Next Generation, but I started recognizing him in movies from Excalibur on. He would turn up in small parts and everything, and he'd just been in Dune only a few months earlier. So I thought, oh yeah, Patrick Stewart's in it. Tobe Hooper's directing. John Dykstra did the special effects. It's written by Dan O'Bannon. Henry Mancini did the music.
I know. This movie actually had everything going for it. I mean, between the writing, like you said, Dan O'Bannon from Aliens. You had John Dykstra, who did the effects, who was from Star Wars. He had involvement, obviously, with Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Tobe Hooper was a renowned director. Well, I mean, he directed. He's very, known for, now he's really, well, he's passed away, but he was known for his horror films and everything. Yeah. But this film had everything going for it. And it's just, and he actually had directed Poltergeist in 1982. He worked with Spielberg. Right, so that was a breakout movie for him. So, and like you said, the music, Henry Mancini. So you had every component that was essentially coming together like a puzzle that was going to say, this is going to be a great film. And it just missed its mark. I mean, it came short, and a lot of it was unfortunately because of the story, the script.
Well, yeah, and there's the persistent rumor that Hooper didn't direct Poltergeist, or he didn't direct key scenes because Spielberg was supposedly, he's the producer. Right. Supposedly he was on set all the time for the film, and judging from what came before. It was so unlike Tobe Hooper's earlier films. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre was his most notorious film, and basically what buttered his bread in the years after, because he followed this up with I guess Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 came out not too long after Lifeforce, also for the Cannon Group. Now the Cannon Group, I know we're jumping all over the place. The Cannon Group, remember Cannon Films?
Yep.
You were guaranteed for a trashy good time with Cannon Films.
Well, that was just it. They were low budget films, and that was the concern about this film. I think they started out with like a $25 million budget.
Yeah.
This 1985 was a lot of money.
It was amazing the budget for this for Cannon Films, because Cannon Films they were doing like Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo, and anything with like Death Wish 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, anything with Chuck Norris, and probably most notoriously films like Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, where there's a zero, no budget sequel to Superman, but supposedly Superman 4 and Masters of the Universe, or Master of the Universe, the He-Man movie, were the three highest budget Cannon Films, if you can believe it. At least in this movie, it looks like the budget wound up on screen.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you talk about Superman 4, I am not a fan of a Quest for Peace.
Yeah, it looks like it was made for
it was a total
$1.95. Yeah.
Hey, Ross, I just want to welcome Sue. Sue, thanks for joining us tonight. Hope you're doing good. Sue's joining us from Massachusetts. And then also I'm seeing Pete Foltz is out there. Pete, welcome. Great to see you out there. And hey, Stuart Foley's joining us. Welcome to the show, Stu. Hope you're doing well. He's commenting, Lifeforce was a great movie. Sue's jumping in saying, I watched this movie only because of Patrick Stewart.
yeah, me too, Sue.
And as Stu is pointing out, Patrick Stewart's first on-screen kiss, and it's with a guy.
That's right. Make it so. Yeah,
Hey, and also the Hague is out there. John Hague is joining us. Welcome, John. Good to see you out there.
Chuck Norris, bread and butter. It's true, he did all the Cannon. Yeah. Films.
Dennis Chevalier is also joining us from Canada as well, too. Welcome, Dennis. But yeah, getting back to what you were saying, though, about the Cannon Films, Ross. Yeah, I mean, they were notorious for not having high funding.
And the Bo Derek movies, don't forget, Bolero and Tarzan the Ape Man with Miles O'Keefe and Richard Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were all terrible. And they were notorious for, if a film went over budget or they ran out of time, they would just stop filming. And then they would just edit together what they had. And if it was incoherent, they didn't care. They just put it in the theaters. Like Treasure of the Four Crowns was another Golan and Globus. Well, I keep saying Golan and Globus because they were the two, head honchos at Cannon during the 80s. Menachem Golan and Yoram Globus steered that ship that kept a steady stream of crap in our multiplexes in the 80s.
Well, the interesting thing is, too, you're talking about the way that they would cut and throw things together. I found it interesting that the editing that was done on this film, too, because they would actually be within a scene, and then what they were going to say is that they were going to actually go to the next, chapter, let's say, of the story or what have you. And it was almost like it just jumped. And they did it several times. It's almost like they did away with the middle, the connectors, and they would just go from one jump to another, to another, to another. And it was an interesting way of doing the filmmaking for this. And I think on some level it works. However, as you said, that they did a lot of editing. In fact, the original running time for this movie was cut by 12 minutes. A lot of that time was taken out of the piece that was in the beginning portion of the movie when they actually discover, well, we'll get into the plot. But,
yeah, well, I didn't read anything about it before I watched it the second time. And I thought, boy, this is really being cut strangely at the beginning because they weren't allowing it to settle in.
Right.
Dan O'Bannon, the writer of Alien, it's a very similar setup. Mm-hmm. But there's no time for atmosphere or mystery or anything like that. There are these very kind of close cuts at the beginning of the movie. Yes. I thought, what the heck's going on? And then I thought it was the running time. I thought they had to do it to kind of, because it was just too quick, all that stuff at the beginning. And it turns out later on, I read, when I was reading about it, it was a 35-minute sequence, and they cut out, most of the 12 minutes came out of that opener.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're taking 12 minutes of a movie out, especially in the beginning, and it's basically setting the stage for everything, and as you said, the atmosphere and everything that's going to be taking place, it really, really makes an impact and a difference. And it was very choppy. I mean, it was to the point where you could actually get away with it. However, it was noticeable.
I noticed it, yeah. And Henry Mancini was really working overtime at the beginning there to kind of make it work and get you, you know,
Well, that was
sucked
part of the
into the
reason why
movie.
that
Yeah.
he, I guess, agreed to do the music for this too, because he
Oh, that's
wanted.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it was like about 15 minutes of music that was going to be, I don't
Right.
know.
Uninterrupted with very little dialogue. Yeah. So I thought, oh, this is a good showcase. And then they
Yeah.
chopped it all up on him. Yeah.
Hey, I want to welcome Linda. Linda is joining us on YouTube. Welcome, Linda. Thank you for being out there.
It's Muttley.
And I also see Lou is joining us on YouTube as well too. Welcome, Lou. Thanks for being out there, and thanks for joining us via YouTube. Don is saying maybe for America. I know the British promo is certainly nudity, so I think it was a selling point. I've heard that there is a 128-minute cut of this film. Hooper's first cut currently unavailable, but I have only seen the 101-minute version. Yeah, I'd be very interested in seeing the extended version, the entire version of this film, because I'm sure it would make a dramatic difference in regards to what the final product was and what it could have been.
Just how indulgent it could be. Yeah. But apparently, according to one of the male, I know we're jumping around, but according to one of the actors who played one of the male vampires in the movie, he said that they totally shut the production down at a point because the studio ran out of money,
right?
And when they resumed filming, they just wound up, not filming certain key scenes that they just kind of cut out of the movie. I didn't think that it was that noticeable, frankly. I mean, the movie's a big, crazy, disjointed melange anyway of different genres, and and it has a heavy. Going back to it now, I get a heavy Hammer vibe from it, like the Hammer films.
Well, and when he came into making this film, I think that's what he was actually thinking that it was almost going to be. And then there was some talk that it was almost like a remake of a Hammer film too.
Yeah, it was like a Quatermass film.
Yes.
And I totally, before reading up on it, I totally thought Quatermass, and it turned out when I was like looking through, I think I looked up Quatermass on Wikipedia and started going through to see if there was a mention of Lifeforce. And it turns out that Dan O'Bannon was actually involved with trying to resurrect the Quatermass series in the 1990s. So it would have been after Lifeforce, but he actually wrote a screenplay for another Quatermass film, which was not made. Yeah, it was Brian Dunleavy played a scientist who was always fighting sinister extraterrestrial forces that were threats to mankind, and Dunleavy played the sadistic sergeant in Beau Jest back in 1939 with Gary Cooper and Ray Milland and Robert Preston. And I think I remember reading somewhere that Ray Milland really clocked him, really knocked him out. Like he's supposed to punch him in the movie, and he did it for real because he was such a bastard.
Nice.
But he played Quatermass. A lot of actors played him, like Doctor Who, that kind of thing. In fact, right. I saw that John Mills had played him at some point in a series, and I would love to see that. I think it was made in I don't even know now. I don't want to conjecture.
What's interesting too is was it Colin Wilson? Was he the author of the book Space Vampires?
Right,
he was not happy with the script for this movie, and he was not happy with the film. In fact, he was, I guess, John Fowles, who had done the movie Magus, had once quoted and said that movie, was a 1968 film, was like the worst film that was ever made. And then Colin came back and he says, I guess he sent him a postcard or something, and he says, I can top you one better. And he said the worst film ever made was Lifeforce. So
yeah,
sadly, he was not very appreciative of this film.
I think the Magus, the book might have been written in 68, but the movie I know was later than that, because Anthony Quinn was in it, and not that he wouldn't have been in the 60s, but I can't remember who. Candice Bergen was in it. And who was the other? Not Michael Caine, was it?
Michael Caine. Yep.
Was it Michael Caine? I didn't see the movie, but I remember when it was out, and it got bad.
Maybe I'm wrong about that. I thought it was.
Well, it came out late enough that I was seeing trailers for it on TV, so it was not that early. The book may have been 68, but in any case, yeah, he was complaining that the film version of the Magus was the worst movie, and yeah, like you said, Colin Wilson said, I could do you one better. There's now a worse one. Yeah.
Christian is commenting, Ross, talking Excalibur, I had a nice rewatch of Knights of the Round Table in French and CinemaScope.
With Robert Taylor.
Oh, there you go. Colin said, I had never heard of Mathilda May or this film in my 20s in the 1980s. It's beyond me.
Yeah.
Matt's commenting, is it just me or was Steve Railsback much more believable as a human being when he played Ed?
Yeah. The thing is, Steve Railsback, I always remember him from The Stuntman with Peter O'Toole and Barbara Hershey.
Wow. I never saw that. I remember the title, though.
Yeah. That's what I remembered him from. But apparently he's just made a whole career playing serial killers and psychopaths. So, yeah, he played Ed Gein, and he played, Helter Skelter, Manson in the miniseries.
Yes.
I didn't realize that. Yeah. So
Don is commenting. He's saying book and movie are different animals, but I like it that way. Well, in the book, essentially what happens is it's the space shuttle. It's taking place in present day. And I guess in the book, it was taking place in the mid 21st century. So it was more taking place in the future. And what they're doing is they're observing Halley's Comet. And in the book, I believe what happens is they come across a meteor storm as opposed to Halley's Comet. And in Halley's Comet, in the tail of Halley's Comet, they discover a 150-mile spaceship that's 150 miles long and I believe 4 miles in height.
In the movie or in the book?
That's in the movie, but in
because
the book, it was
an 150 miles. Like it was big. I remember. Was it really 150 miles?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's your story, and you're sticking to it.
I am.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go with that.
I know. I mean, 150 miles. It almost reminded me of course, I'm going to make the Space 1999 reference with Mission to the Darians when they come across the Darien ship, because it's like they say it's like 50 miles of spaceship, but in this case, this was 150 miles. So
bigger than a Star Destroyer.
Yeah, bigger than a Star Destroyer.
They didn't have the shot though at the beginning, the Spaceball shot.
Hey, Shari's out there. Hey, hon. She's saying, "Hey guys, nice to see you doing a 1980s film. Think I saw this, but remind me. Plot. Lots of laughs. Shower scene."
It didn't need one. The whole movie's a shower scene, but without the shower.
And you know what's so funny? Mathilda May is only in this movie. Her entire screen time in this whole film is only 7 minutes.
That's amazing. I mean, it's a star-making performance. Yeah. I can't believe she was only in it for 7 minutes.
7 minutes. I mean,
wow.
Throughout the whole movie, but it totals only 7 minutes.
Yeah. Well, in the uncut version, I know she has more scenes. So.
Oh boy, Matt.
Oh,
I'm gonna give you this one, Matt, and then I'll jump back to your comment as Ross. When the male vampires woke up, I was expecting Leslie Nielsen to come down the steps and say to the guards, "Gentlemen, have you ever seen a grown space vampire naked?" Actually, you're thinking of Peter
Graves.
Peter Graves was the one who made that comment in the airplane movie, Matt. Not to correct you, but I know what you meant.
Don't tangle with Rain Man. Yeah, you're right.
What's that?
Yeah, you're right. Now it turns out she wasn't naked after all. They put rubber soles on her feet so she wouldn't cut herself when she was walking across the glass. So, for modesty's sake.
There you go.
Covered the bottoms of her feet.
I see Deborah's out there. Hey, Deborah, thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well. And let me see here. Don is saying maybe it rained.
Maybe if it rained, it would be a shower scene. Yeah.
Christian saying, "Did Sherry see Psycho?" and I've been validated by Matt. He said I was right.
He's humbled.
Anyway. But before we go on, I want to just take the moment to share, as we always like to do on the show. Whoops, I think I hit the wrong button there. We always like to give a shout out to Starlog Magazine. And back in the day, Starlog Magazine issue 97 had actually covered the film Lifeforce, and they actually had an interview with Steve Railsback, who plays the lead character, Colonel Tom Carlson, in this film. And
he's not the lead character.
What's that?
He's not the lead. Nobody remembers him in this movie.
He had more screen time.
All right.
He was on more than 7 minutes, Ross.
Yeah, it turns out everybody had more screen time, and nobody remembers him. Yeah, except Patrick Stewart.
Except Patrick Stewart.
who had even less than 7 minutes, I think.
Actually, yeah, 22 minutes.
Did he really?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, this part is, he comes on basically, and he's got 1 or 2 lines, and he just keeps getting beat up and bleeds out. But anyway.
Anyway.
I guess kissed first. I forgot. Sorry.
We're just having too much fun tonight.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, and that Mad Max is on the cover of that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably for the 3rd movie, though. If it's 85, it was probably Beyond Thunderdome.
Right. Yep. It would have been. And then also, what else is covered? Red Sonja, Fright Night. Oh my goodness. Cocoon. This movie actually opened, I believe, up against Cocoon, and it really pretty much got crushed too.
They should have had Ron Howard direct it. It would have been Lifeforce, the Star Wars story. With the secret origins of Lando.
Oh, anyway. So anyway, as we like to say on the show, all roads lead to Star Trek. Obviously, with Patrick Stewart as Captain Picard and playing the role of Dr. Armstrong. So there you go.
Yeah. So supposedly Toby Hooper, he's gone on record to say Toby Hooper was his favorite director.
Yeah, that's true.
He liked working on this movie, which, as I say, it's so funny that he has fond memories of this film, because he has such a, he's got a couple of lines, and then he's just basically possessed and just totally degraded.
No, I mean, he was a great sport about it. But here's an example though, and this I mean, like you said, Patrick Stewart was doing other films in this period of time. I mean, he had done Excalibur, he had just done Dune, and then this film came out. But isn't it amazing how careers go for actors though? Sometimes they get their break, and look what happened with him. I mean, he loved the theater. He's a Shakespearean trained actor. I mean, he's excellent in his craft.
Right.
But he got with Star Trek: The Next Generation. I mean, you have to wonder what would have happened if he hadn't taken that role. What would have his career been? And it can be said of so many actors out there that are brilliant, but don't ever get their opportunity or that big break. And for him, Star Trek obviously was, in regards to at least the financial success. And then, of course, even, for Star Trek fans, it's been said, too, that Star Trek: The Next Generation, it's documented. We were talking about this on Captain Phil's show last week. This was something that came up. Next Generation is pretty much at the top as far as Paramount, or CBS Entertainment, in regards to being the moneymaker. And it's in that generation now. Star Trek: The Next Generation premiered 35 years ago, which is just insane.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know.
But anyway.
Well, he certainly wouldn't have had the international celebrity without Star Trek. Right. I mean, like I said, he was a familiar face to me as a I saw every movie back then, and I'd see him all the time in these things. But yeah, he like many English actors, he had a career in the theater, just like Frank Finlay, who's also in the movie. He was a stage actor. In addition to, they went and did films because it's another way to make money. And, a lot of them came to America because that's where you made the real money.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because they didn't get paid. They'd do anything over there to make a living. But what I love about the British actors is that they take all the material so seriously. That's why we have people like Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. Like, just they keep going back and doing these things. Right. And they do. And they're so good. I mean, they play them like it's Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, it's just very well respected actors, and again, just like Patrick Stewart, another very, very well respected actor, and he played this straight. I mean,
yeah, right. even though we were laughing the whole time, yeah. But Frank Finlay, for instance, at the time he was making this movie, he was named a companion of the British Empire, and he went before the Queen, and for the honor, and the Queen asked him what he was working on at the time, and he was embarrassed to say he's working on a film called Space Vampires. he had to tell Elizabeth II that he was currently at work on Space Vampires, Your Majesty.
And again, a well-respected actor. And also, All roads lead to Space 1999 with this film. Aubrey Morris, who plays Sir Percy Heseltine. We were just talking about Mission of the Darians, and he was actually the high priest in that episode. So interesting enough that, he turned up in this movie. And also,
I always remember him from A Clockwork Orange.
Yes, and then also he was also in the Wicker Man too.
Right. He was the gravedigger.
Yep.
Yeah, he was Alex's. I don't know if it was parole officer or some kind of counselor in A Clockwork Orange. Very quirky actor. Yeah.
And then also Peter Proteus. He was actually the prime minister, and he played the character of Petrov in 3 episodes of the second season of Space 1999, The Metamorph, The Exiles, and then also Space Warp. So there you go. I mean, we actually we had a little bit of a connection going on there.
You had a connection. I thought so. And Frank Finlay, I don't know if you have any slides of him, since he was one of the top billings, but he was in.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen the Three Musketeers, the Richard Lester movies, he was one of the Musketeers with Oliver Reed and who else was in it there? Richard Chamberlain and Michael York. The Three Musketeers with 4 Musketeers.
Again, great caliber of actors, right?
But again, a stage actor. He was Iago in the Olivier film version of Othello, for which he was nominated for an Oscar. But he did a lot of stage work. He was in the stage production of Amadeus, one of the early Salieri's, and he played actually an interesting connection. He played Von Helsing in the BBC production of Dracula that had Louis Jourdan as the Count. Oh. And because he kind of plays Von Helsing in this movie too.
Yes.
And I think originally he was supposed to play it with a German accent, even though Von Helsing's Dutch, but he was supposed to have kind of that foreign, vampire expertise. He's the expert on death, and he's all obsessed with the facets of death. What happens when we die? What happens after we die? And he's the one that ultimately finds the blade that's going to, be able to exterminate the vampire menace.
I thought, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but I thought it very interesting with his character because he seemed to be all knowing and all knowledgeable, and he knew the background, and he was kind of putting the pieces together with everything. But it's almost like when he meets his fate, it was almost like, okay, here it comes, and then boom, you know what I mean? It was almost comical.
Yeah, but you know what though? I had to do kind of a double take in my head. I had to do a double take when he died because it seemed like a real CG type effect, but it was old fashioned. It was before CGI was so right. Had taken off. It was old fashioned practical makeup effect. With his face bubbling and everything as he keeled over. They did a lot of that in this movie. They did it with Patrick Stewart too. Who had the best death scene in the movie, probably.
Oh, wow. No, the effects were not chintzy by any means for this film. I mean, they
if they were hilarious. But,
yeah, I mean, they put a lot into it.
They put a lot of money into them. Yeah,
it was no CGI though, so
there was no CGI. And Patrick Stewart, we get a little foretaste of his Professor X. They put him in the wheelchair in the movie. Did you notice when they wheeled him into the insane asylum?
Yes.
And he improv the line, when they were going to visit the patient in the asylum, and Patrick Stewart, he was supposed to say he's been bad, but Patrick Stewart said, can we change it to he's been naughty?
And they kept it.
Yeah, I didn't know he changed it because I chuckled when I was watching the movie and he said that. Of all the things in this movie, that's what's going to be naughty.
Hey, I want to give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to Vince. I see Vince is out there. Hey, Vince, thanks for joining us. And Vince is also joining us on YouTube. Great to see you out there, Vince. And just to let everybody know, Vince is still in the rehab, but he's making progress. And Vince, our positive thoughts are with you, and for your recovery. And we're glad that you're able to join us tonight. So glad you're out there, pal. And also Captain Phil is in the house. Captain Phil is commenting, here I am watching you guys on YouTube on my TV, but commenting on Facebook, and they say there isn't anything good on TV. Okay, where is Matilda? Thanks for joining us, Captain Phil, and thanks for joining us on Facebook as well as YouTube. In regards to Mathilda May, I should say. Actually, I'm going to go back to some of this to the screenshots. So yeah, so here's what's Ross?
Did you pick the most phallic shot of the spaceship?
Well, and interesting enough,
yeah.
the spaceship, which is is a phallic shot, that was the intention. They said when they were actually composing it.
Yeah, well, I didn't know they actually went with the design. I know they were talking about it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously they did go with it from that photo. In any case.
just to kind of refresh people's memories if they haven't seen this movie in a long time.
With the mini images.
And then there's Mathilda May.
There you go. And a lot of animatronic corpses or zombies or what have you in this film too. Reanimated dead, which I really enjoyed. And they would just blow to powder. I totally forgotten that. When the one runs at the bars and blows apart and showers across Aubrey Morris and he gets out his handkerchief.
Oh boy. Anyway.
And there you can see one of the vampire bats. The images are always so small.
Yeah.
But
there we go.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a grueling trip back to see this movie, remembering 1985. But I actually rather enjoy. I enjoyed it the more it went on. For me, it got better, as the movie continued.
It's funny though that you're saying that because, like I said, when I first saw this in the theaters, I was expecting a lot more. I think at that time too, I was expecting more more taking place in space. And then when it came to Earth and everything seemed to be like in disarray, I think that's pretty much where I kind of fell off back in the 80s.
Right.
I was thinking it was going to be one thing and then it was actually something else.
Yeah. It turns into an apocalyptic film instead of a vampire movie. It turns into kind of more of a zombie thing or something. And you expected vampires. And here they're energy vampires. They drain people's energy. They're not putting their fangs in people's necks and stuff. They're not running around with capes. Thank goodness, Mathilda.
Now, just to give a small summary of the plot, we're not gonna go deep into this whole thing.
All right.
But in regards to it, what starts out is a spaceship, which is the space shuttle, the Churchill, which is essentially it has Americans as well as British astronauts on board, are observing Halley's Comet. Because as we know, Halley's Comet only passes once, I think, 76 years, if I remember correctly?
Something like that. I know Mark Twain came in with it and left with it.
Literally, right? Because it happened on both his birthdays, didn't it?
Right.
Yeah. So essentially, they're observing everything, but then what happens is they find evidence of something on their scanners, and it shows that there's a spaceship that's at the tail of Halley's Comet. So they decide that they're going to investigate. They try to get in contact with Earth, but then they're in a blackout period where they can't reach them. And then the blackout period is going to be indefinite from their position. So what the captain makes the decision that they're going to go and explore it. So what happens is they go into almost like an orbit of it. And then 4 of them go out and they decide to investigate. And this is where it's very similar to Alien, the first Alien movie, because it's like you have the astronauts that leave the ship and they're going out to investigate, and what do they find? And what happens is they go through like a cavern, and when they get into this it's almost like a labyrinth. I mean, it's almost like a cave that's in space.
Yeah, and it's very organic. I mean, it's like Alien, like the ship when you go inside of it and you're almost inside of a living entity. It was like that with this movie too, except, and I'm not like the hugest Ridley Scott fan, but Ridley Scott really did a good job, laying the groundwork, the foundation for Alien. And that's what they really needed at the beginning of this movie. But it's probably just ruined by the editing.
Right. It was very choppy. And again,
Yeah.
it would be very interesting to be able to get that extra 12 minutes of footage and see actually how it would play
Yeah.
out watching it,
But
in slow
also,
motion.
though, unlike Alien, it was more brightly lit. You
Mm.
know, it was not a lot of shadows and things. Yeah.
Now, one thing I felt, at least I was waiting for, and I didn't
CGI.
remember all the
Yeah,
details of this film. I mean, obviously, the one thing I do remember about this film is Patrick Stewart being in the movie.
for 5 minutes.
No, I mean, that was a joke, folks. But
Yeah.
no, what I remember is obviously Mathilda May being in this film, and then also Patrick Stewart.
All right.
However, with that put aside, I was waiting for something to happen to one of the astronauts when they went in there, because it's like it's the buildup. It's like
Right.
it's very formulaic. You where something happens, they go into this like dark
Right.
room and
It's
dark cave. You
the
just
John Hurt thing,
yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But what happens is the one astronaut who's the captain, and he starts reacting and feeling like his energy is being drained essentially, and it's really choppy because what happens is they get them back to the ship, and the next thing what happens is that it's cutting back to Earth, where the Churchill's coming back. It's 30 days later, but there's no contact with them. And it's almost like the Churchill is just kind of like spinning out of control and heading into the atmosphere. And this, that something's, is run amok. And essentially when it comes back and they retrieve it, what they find is that the ship has basically been decimated, from within. And the only thing that's remaining are these three naked bodies. One is
And a lot of charred remains. Yeah,
yeah, and of the crew, and
of the
it's
crew.
the
Yeah.
one female and the two guys. And what happens is they bring them to this space lab where they're going to try to find out what's going on with them, and they're going to conduct their experiments.
The
They're going to
space lab on Earth.
on Earth, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then this is where it all begins. And I'm not going to go into all the details because I don't want to spoil the fun.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but again, even with that though, it's very choppy. It's just the way it goes from one point to another, and obviously you have a guard or what is it? One of the security consoles. Yeah, it's like he's really curious. He sees this woman that's just laying there naked, and he's she's covered a little bit, and then he goes over to her, and then I think he touches her, and then that's when she wakes up. And then, she sits up totally naked. And then, he comes closer to her, and then she basically zaps the energy out of him. And then he turns into this pretty much corpse.
Through a kiss.
Through a kiss.
Quite an intense kiss. Yeah. The what am I thinking here with the lab stuff? I was going to draw a comparison to another science fiction movie that we saw, but I guess I blanked because I was going to say also Mathilda May was ballet dancer, early on. So a lot of her movements, like when she kind of gets up and swivels off the table, and they gave her kind of that was one of the reasons they hired her, is because she was able to be so graceful and make these unexpectedly fluid movements when she did things. Yeah. So.
Oh, and another thing too, Ross, just to piggyback off of what you're talking about, they were considering, I think, close to 1,000 actresses for this role. Yeah. And a part of the problem with them actually getting an actress to be a part of this film is that the requirement was that she had to be nude. I mean, she was going to be bare naked, and not to be descriptive, but she could have no, we're discussing the movie, so we're all, adults here. So
it's just nudity, Roy.
Right. It's an art. She was not, Toby did not want her to have any type of, let's just say, hair anywhere showing. And they went and they pretty much, put her through the,
I love how, oh, well, then you got to like get the most descriptive possible. It's like, okay, Roy, where are we going to go with this?
Again, we're talking about the film.
Yeah, right. Yes. Talking about Patrick Stewart's hair. Yeah.
Anyway.
But now you threw me off.
I'm
Oh
sorry.
yeah, all the number of actors who auditioned for all the parts. Apparently, for Patrick Stewart's part, somebody said they had considered like every English actor over 35 for the role before Patrick Stewart got it. But I mean, they asked Michael Caine and they asked Anthony Hopkins, not for that part, but for the Peter Firth role. Terrence Stamp was considered.
Yes.
And a lot of people were, and it's in some role or other, Klaus Kinski was considered, but he didn't turn up in the movie, so
Right.
she was waxed. Watch the movie. Actually, she was apparently at first, and they had to kind of put stuff back because they didn't like how it looked.
But evidently, she was a trooper. Now she was only 18 years old too when she did this film.
I know that's what. Yeah, no.
That's the other thing too. She was
Right,
very,
and
very
but she was French, and it's France,
right. And they
Anything
actually
goes.
they had actually listed this as being her first film, and it actually
Yeah.
was, I guess, her third. She had done 2 other movies in
Right,
France.
right. And most of her career has been in French movies. I mean, she's done some American things. I remember she was in a remake of Day of the Jackal with
Oh, okay.
Bruce Willis and Richard Gere.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I don't think it was really well reviewed, but yeah, she was in a lot of French movies. Everyone's naked in France. Exactly. That's very European.
Phil is commenting saying that he must be getting old, and then he's asking if the other 2 guys, the other vamps, were naked. No, in fact, because of censorship, they actually were required to make sure that they were not exposed, Phil. So just
Well, they shot them mostly from the waist up anyway.
Yeah. Right. So that was, they were very careful with.
But they covered them just in case, something would.
Right. I think
get through.
Yeah.
Now, one of the male vampires was Mick Jagger's brother.
His younger brother, right?
Yeah. So it's nice to know that vampirism runs in the family.
Yeah. I was very surprised.
Sorry, Mick. Yeah.
Sorry, Nick. I was very surprised to read about that too. Yeah. And interesting enough too, what was the tagline for this movie too, Ross? In the blink of an eye, the terror begins.
Well, there must have been a lot of terror because I was seeing a lot of the inside of my eyes in the 80s. The inside of my eyelids. Lifeforce. Yeah, that's marketing. That must have been some of that Golan and Globus promotion. Some of that Canon Films promotion. Yeah.
Ironically enough, too, Percy Rodriguez was actually the announcer for the when the movies were coming
out.
Trailers. Yeah. So there was All Roads Lead to Star Trek with Percy Rodriguez. I didn't mention that earlier. Don is commenting. He's saying Mathilda May's self-titled pop album came out in 1992. I had a friend living in Paris at the time who was extremely embarrassed when she bought it for me.
Because of the quality of the album, or because of Lifeforce? Yeah. Apparently, she had to learn all the English phonetically. She didn't speak any English.
Yes, in fact, I guess it was was it Firth that was the or not Firth? Peter Firth. I guess they purposely didn't have him speak with a German accent because he was
actually,
because of she was learning. It took her 6 months to learn English for the making of this film. So she actually was, I don't want to say mimicking, but she was, using him as a guide as far as with speaking English. So they wanted to make sure that he didn't have his accent with that.
Right. Yeah. Well, she was still learning at the point that the film was being made, but she picked it up over the period of time that the film was being made.
Right.
At least rudimentary English.
Yeah. That, if you think about it, though, that had to be pretty tough. I mean,
of course. Yeah.
But
she was a good sport.
No, she definitely was.
Yeah.
Some of the other comments coming through, Colin is saying, didn't know she sang too. I'll have to check YouTube later.
I didn't even think about that. Of course, it would probably be on there.
Now, Phil's asking, is the record in French? That's a good question, Phil. I'm not sure. Matt. Oh, actually, Christian is saying no, it's in Prague, Phil. Hi. Well, there you go.
The Prague. Oh,
interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, but overall, though, in regards to this film, so it's almost like a virus that takes place. And what's interesting is she actually, her essence, what she can do is her spirit, so to speak, can leave a body and go to another body and essentially jump from person to person. And this is what happens when she breaks out of that center. And I guess what she does is she encounters a woman at some point where she actually inhabits her body. And what she does is she has her body that is, what was initially discovered, hidden. And her intention is actually to come back, but she's almost on the run. Well, she is. She's on the run because she knows everybody's after her. And this is what's happening. She's jumping from body to body. Now, when somebody is infected, evidently, if they do get sustained, if they take the life force from somebody else, they're rejuvenated for about 2 hours. And then after that 2 hour time, they turn back into this zombie that's pretty much drained of all of its essence.
They need to feed again. Yeah. And when she leaves the center, I got the, she was like a female Terminator. She's kind of like the Schwarzenegger kind of thing. Nobody could stop her. She's not wearing any clothes. She just wanders off into the night. But you're right, exponentially, as these vampires are sucking people's energy, they're, they have to feed off of other people, and it just turns into, what we get in the last third of the movie or what have you.
And this is essentially everybody. I mean, at the space center that's at the science center that's on Earth. They're trying to piece together what actually happened to the Churchill. They don't know. And then what turns out happening is in Texas, Steve Rausback's character, Colonel Tom Carlson, was the commander of the mission, he actually lands in Texas in an escape pod. And he's brought back to Britain to give his story, to explain what exactly happened to the crew. And when he tells the story originally, what he's telling is that one by one, each of the crew members essentially were dying, and that they were losing their life force, so to speak, and withering away. At one point, I guess he accuses the communications officer of having destroyed the console. The communications officer says that he doesn't know why he did it. Other people that are on the ship don't realize what's happening. So he pieces everything together. And what he says is that he realizes that it's these three beings that they took on board. And he says he wants to make sure that they never make it back to Earth. So what he does is he essentially turns the ship into a bomb where it's going to get incinerated. He releases gas.
Like Ripley.
Yeah, like Ripley, exactly. And then he makes his way back to Earth in the escape pod because he's determined to make sure that they don't make their way back.
Another call back to Alien. Thank you, Dan O'Bannon.
Yeah, exactly. It really follows that formula.
Yeah. But I shouldn't even open my mouth now because I forget by the time we get to
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I can't remember. Dan O'Bannon and Don Jacoby, who co-wrote the screenplay, had worked before on Blue Thunder, and they worked again on Tobe Hooper's follow-up to this, which was Invaders from Mars, the remake of the 50s film. But alone, Dan Jacoby went on to do Vampires for John Carpenter. That was one of his projects. And apparently the two of them were going to collaborate on a Pinocchio movie that had Lee Marvin playing Geppetto, but that never materialized.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because you can imagine that.
As you know, Martin Landau went on to play Geppetto.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think everybody's played Geppetto at some point, but Lee Marvin. So sorry to get off subject. It was the Dan O'Bannon thing that made me think of that, but that's not what I was originally going to say. But all right, so we're back on the Churchill, and he ejects out of the escape pod. And what happens then, Roy?
No. So essentially, though, that they're trying to piece together what's going on, and they actually put him under hypnosis too at one point to retell this entire story. And he has some kind of connection with Mathilda May's character. We'll say she's, what did you describe her, Ross, as? What was her the space girl, I guess is the term that they refer to her as.
Yeah, in the credits she's referred to as Space Girl, which they probably would not call her that today. But I mean, come on, she's naked. At that point, what's a little more exploitation? It's interesting that there's so many. Well, I mean, I'm sure it's intentional. So many parallels to Bram Stoker's Dracula in the movie. Right from the very beginning of the film. At the point that you're talking about, when the ship shows up and the whole crew is dead and they're trying to get to the bottom of what went on, and they have the mysterious cargo and everything, which is just what happens in Dracula with the Demeter. The ship, the Phantom ship that comes into port. And then there's a plague, well, everybody's infected. Yeah.
I'm actually going to take it a step further too. Now, I didn't do a slide for this, and I didn't discuss it, although it was something that we had joked about talking about and doing as an episode. But there was a Buck Rogers in the 25th Century episode. For the Buck Rogers fans out there that used to watch it back from 1979 to 1981, there was actually an episode called The Space Vampire. And Buck, Wilma, and Tweaky are actually going to a space station. And what they're going to do is they're going to drop Tweaky off and have Tweaky pretty much get a tune-up, we'll say. And what's going to happen is Buck and Wilma are going to come back from him probably like in about a week, and they're going to, go on like a vacation or whatever. And while they're there, what happens is one of Wilma's old flames is running the station. In fact, it's the actor's name is, and I can't think of it. He was married to D. Wallace Stone. It's Chris Stone. He had passed away like back in around 1980, 81. I believe he had a heart attack, but he was married to D. Wallace Stone. And everybody knows her from Cujo and all, the films and what have you. But anyway, he's the captain of the space station. And what they do is they pick up that there's this ship that is actually heading right to them on a collision course. And it's not slowing down. They're trying to get in contact with it, and nobody's responding. And the ship actually winds up crashing into the space station, and it breaches the hull. And then what they do is they go on board the ship and they investigate it. And when they're in there, all the power's out, all the lights are out and everything. They find a servo drone that's deactivated. They find like this white medallion. Buck finds it, tries to find out what it is. And all the crew, the 7 crewmates that are on the ship, are all dead. And what happens is they, of course, have these marks on their necks. And essentially, they get them back. And Buck and Wilma are forced to be in quarantine because they think it was something E7 or something, with some kind of disease that when they go through the logs that they think that may have been on the ship but wasn't decontaminated properly. And anyway, what happens is they start going through everything. And then Wilma starts getting terrorized by the space vampire that needs energy to survive. And it's not even like blood, it's energy. Yeah. So I almost wonder if this story, it sounds just like it.
Yeah, I guarantee you they didn't steal it from Buck Rogers.
No, I'm not saying the movie was stolen from Buck Rogers, but I'm saying that the movie or this Buck Rogers episode could have been influenced by the book, is what I'm saying.
Well, but this was 85. Was Buck Rogers on in 85? Wasn't it earlier?
Yeah, Buck Rogers episode was in 79.
So through a time machine, somebody sent it back to, and Bill Gerard found it on a beach or something.
Well, no, the book that Colin.
The Colin Will.
That was done 8 years before.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much. Yeah, I'm not. I haven't read the book, so I can't speak to that. But maybe
it could have.
Maybe somebody involved with Buck Rogers actually read a book. I'm not sure. But
anyway, if anybody remembers that Buck Rogers episode, free to comment.
But also, getting back to Dracula. There's that psychic link that he kind of forms with Mina, where Van Helsing is always hypnotizing her and trying to find out the Count's actions. And this is an inversion of that, instead It's the male, it's Railsback, Tom Carlson. That's the Mina character. And there's an insane asylum, just like there is with Seward's. Dr. Seward is the head of the asylum, the Patrick Stewart in the movie. And ultimately, we have the thing with the iron sword, which they find out is the way to take out the vampires, and the count, not in the movies usually, but in the book, it is a blade that takes him out. It's not a stake. So
right. You know what? I'm going to give myself a plug here. Back in 2006 at Country Gate Playhouse, I actually was in a production of Dracula. We did that, and actually we did it in September, the last 2 weekends in September, and I think it was the first weekend of October. And it's crazy to think that was 16 years ago. And Bill's out there tonight too. And I got to play Jonathan Harker, and I actually at the end I got to kill Dracula, which was a lot of fun. That was probably out of all the shows I did there, and that was probably like my one of the roles I loved the most, because it was just a lot of fun being in that.
Was there a Quincy Morris character too, or did they just have Jonathan Harker?
No, it was Jonathan Harker. In fact, Vince played Van Helsing.
Okay. So who was the Count?
The Count was Kelvin. Kelvin was the Count. He was
Count
Dracula.
Kelvin.
Well, no, Kelvin is. Oh goodness. I'm seeing The Hague is saying Vorgon. Yes, it was a Vorgon from the Buck Rogers episode, and Jennifer is saying she remembers that episode of Buck Rogers as well too.
40-year-old male.
And Matt, comment.
It's true though.
Phil saying the best Buck Rogers episode was, except for Flight of the
War Witch.
That was
all of these things are just on the very periphery of my memory, but he's probably right.
Yeah, Flight of the War Witch actually was the last 2 episodes of the first season, and that had Julie Newmar was in that. To Kill a City was a good one too. Yeah, good stuff. Phil's also saying, I think the idea of energy vampires comes from being trapped in a sci-fi convention con suite with a guy who won't stop quoting Mighty Ponthai lines. It's just going to suck your essence out there, Phil. At least he didn't say Star Trek or Space 1999.
That's right. Space 1999 references. Right.
But anyway, there's a lot of similarities, though, to your point, though, Ross, with obviously with Dracula and everything, to the point where throughout the movie, where
right from the beginning, right?
Yeah, which is cool. I mean,
yeah,
it's only appropriate.
It is.
But anyway, getting back, so essentially they're trying. As you were saying, he has this, or as I was saying, or as we were both saying, there is that connection, because what's happened is the space girl has taken the energy out of the Colonel, and in so doing has formed a mental or physical bond that he can actually detect her and sense when she's been in somebody's body, or if she's in a body, he's picking up on it. And he's not very clear about what she wants. He just knows that he's drawn to her. He even states that it's a sexuality that he's never felt on such a strong level with any woman, and he doesn't understand why it's as strong as it is. And he pretty much wants to be released from it because he feels like a prisoner. And with everything that's happening in the city and trying to put an end to this spread, because essentially London, it's an epidemic that's spreading, and then they at one point they decide that they're going to have to isolate London, and if anybody tries to leave or tries to get in, they're pretty much going to be executed because of everything that's going on. And when they find out that it's in Patrick Stewart's character, and they try to drive it out, he's trying to find out exactly what's going on. He gives he's using like a hypnotic drug, and gives him an overdose to a certain level, which probably would have killed him under normal circumstances. But unfortunately, the essence of the life force of what she is actually comes out of Patrick Stewart, killing him, and then it pretty much metamorphosizes into this woman again, where she's free to be out on the loose.
He kind of has this superhuman strength. It's more like The Exorcist, I think, when they start drugging him, and they keep giving him more and more drugs, but he's still not sedated. And yeah, that was kind of an interesting precursor to the Francis Coppola Dracula film, where she materializes out of the blood and then she collapses onto the floor into a zillion droplets or what have you. It's kind of reminded me of the bat scene. I don't know if you remember from where he turns into a giant bat and then collapses into like all these rats that run off into the corners. Gary Oldman. And I can't remember, even just having reread the book last year, I can't remember if there's a scene that wouldn't have been exactly like that, because there's none of that in Stoker's book. But I can't remember if there was something sort of like that where the Count, kind of evaporates. I know he goes out like keyholes and stuff like that, and under doors and that sort of thing.
Right, exactly.
But it was an interesting effect that they had her kind of made out of the congealed stuff that comes out of Patrick Stewart's head.
Yeah. I mean, he's literally decomposing, and then you can see where she's forming, and then just metamorphosizes. I guess that's my word today. Yeah. Jeff Rubel saying, "Yeah, Buck's vampire looked like Nosferatu." Absolutely. And thanks, Bill, for the compliment. He says I was stellar in Dracula. that was just such a fun role. I love that role. Thanks, Bill. Phil saying, actually, that goofy story is half true. The guy I'm talking about wouldn't stop quoting Wrath of Khan. It wasn't me. Christian is saying, very cool, Roy. He stole Van Helsing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Vince and I had fun. Hey, and Linda is out there. Linda, I thought you were here under somebody else's YouTube, so I apologize, whoever that was earlier, and welcome, Linda. Great to see that you're out there tonight.
There's a harp. Yeah.
Thanks, Vince. And yes, you were great as Van Helsing too, Vince. Sterling Hayden, that's why, although I don't avoid the company of woman mandrake, I do deny them my essence. Oh man. Oh man.
Dr. Strangelove, yeah.
Dr. Strangelove, yeah.
Which is an interesting connection because Tobe Hooper apparently prepared the film Venom a few years earlier, which Klaus Kinski was in, and one of the actors in the film was Sterling Hayden. Yeah.
Yes, and then Peter Porteous, who we're talking about, he was also in that film, I think, too.
Yeah, I mean, he wound up leaving the movie.
Yeah,
but he was supposed to do Venom.
Yeah. So lots of connections with those folks, which is kind of cool.
And Klaus Kinski was in it. Did I say that? Because we were talking about Klaus Kinski earlier. Yeah, not turning up in this movie. He was probably hired, just didn't come. It was so terrifying that nobody wanted to work with him.
Now, the other guy that who is it? It's
he played Nosferatu, by the way, Kinski.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, in the Werner Herzog remake, 1979 or 81, 81, I guess it was.
Okay,
go ahead.
Peter Firth, who plays the Colonel. The other guy that was in this movie, Michael Gothard, he plays the doctor. He's in the very beginning, and he sees what's happening to the security guard. He actually was trying out for that role, but he got bumped when Tobe Hooper saw the performance or the audition by Peter Firth. And supposedly it really caused him a lot of depression, and some of his friends actually attributed it to him not doing very well, and I guess having issues that took place, and eventually dying shortly thereafter. So there was something that was actually commented on, which is kind of sad actually. Yeah. But
a lot of people were up for that. They wanted to get Michael Caine. Michael Caine was busy.
Right.
Anthony Hopkins, Terrence Stamp, I mentioned.
George Papard, I think, was considered was somebody that was on the list of folks to potentially be in this film. There was a lot of people they were looking at.
I love horror movies like this where you have kind of like a buddy film, except there was no spark really between Railsback and Firth. But I always love that when they get the two guys fighting the monsters, kind of like where it's kind of it's the love-hate thing going on between it's a bromance, but you got monsters.
I don't know, Russ.
Playing it straight. Yeah.
I was sensing the camaraderie.
You were getting that a little bit. I love Lair of the White Worm, Ken Russell's movie. That's very tongue-in-cheek, and another film that could have been a Hammer movie. But you got Hugh Grant, and you got the Scottish actor in there playing the two that take on the White Worm. And the Countess, whatever her name is.
The Countess.
That's a weird book. by the way.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was Bram Stoker's last book. Yeah, it was no Dracula, but it was a strange book. Yeah.
Now,
I think he may have been under the influence, so he wrote that one. Yeah.
Bram Stoker's Dracula. That was the one with Tom Cruise, right?
No, it's Interview with a Vampire.
That's Interview with the Vampire. That was
the movie was the Gary Oldman.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Bram Stoker, of course, was the author of Dracula. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's Matt. Larry the White Worm. Yeah, that's one of my favorite Ken Russell movies.
Yeah, and Brennan's actually commenting too, saying a young Peter Capaldi. And Christian saying Lair was made after Russell's Gothic.
Right.
Yeah.
And before Salome's Last Dance. Yeah.
And Colin saying Dracula Untold, one of my recent favorite Dracula movies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. See, I didn't see that one. That one looked pretty heavily CG. So maybe I'll check it out one of these days. Nothing like Keanu Reeves in a vampire flick. Vampires versus surfers.
Bill and Ted, right?
Yeah. Time traveling surfers.
So with everything that was going on, so with the Colonel, he's so drawn to her, and he's determined to try to get to her. And it's almost like at one point he's mesmerized that he has to find her. They were able to actually get back to the base, and where things are actually quarantined. And he says that he's got to find her, and I guess he steals a car and he goes off. And then what happens is Peter Firth's character goes after him, and it's so ridiculous because Firth is being chased by all these zombies, and there's like 1,000 of them coming at him at one point. And then the next time they cut, it's like there's only like a few running behind him. So you have to wonder what actually wound up on the editing floor with all of that. And then he pulls out his gun and he starts shooting one or two just to knock them out. But meanwhile, he's able to escape them all. And then he actually winds up meeting up with that doctor, and that was Frank Finlay's character, who essentially, like you were saying earlier, Ross, he's been watching all this unfold, and how he feels that this is given credence to the legends of the vampires, and how the ship that has these creatures in it had once visited Earth, thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago. And this cycle is like starting all over again. And that's the other thing that we didn't mention too. This ship that was at the tail end of Halley's Comet, for whatever reason, now is actually in what they say a geosynchronous orbit around Earth. And it's essentially trying to collect, almost like an umbrella when it opens up, all the energy that is being taken out of the people that have been dying from this. And then this collector is essentially having all the energy of all the essence of all the souls go up into the ship, and it's feeding them. Now, what we don't know is what's going to happen. Is it going to revive the other I'll say vampires or the other life forms that are on the ship? What is actually happening? Because we really don't know. I mean, you're kind of like putting pieces together.
You get the one specimen at the beginning, but he's desiccated. Remember, they snap the finger off. So how many of those are still capable of reviving?
Yeah, and we just don't know.
And the ship could be organic,
Yeah, that's true.
So who knows what that stuff's made out of in there? Yeah. So, well, I think they say at a point when they're trying to X-ray it that it was suggested that maybe it was organic. I'm sorry, I dropped my pen.
Oh, that's okay.
Not that I'm doing anything. I'm just playing with it.
Phil said, I like the idea of Lifeforce vampires following comets which bring the elements to planets that cause life to evolve. So I guess maybe a scavenger thing going on here, the way seagulls follow fishing boats.
That's a nice insight.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing about the other parallel to Dracula was when he comes to England, I think he moves into, what is it? Is it Halifax Abbey? It's the abbey that he has the coffins in with the earth and she takes up residence in, I believe it's in St. Paul's Cathedral, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yep.
So she too is in this sacred space. She hides her body there as her soul or whatever is, her, whatever it is, her life force is moving around in all of her victims. She's Carfax. Thank you, Carfax Abbey.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Of all the places for where she's almost like hiding out in a cathedral, right?
Right.
Never
look for her there. Yeah.
No, exactly.
Where do we look for the vampire? She's in church. Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah.
So with that, Steve Railsback's character, Tom Carlson, the Colonel, he's trying to find her. He's trying to, determine what's going on. I mean, he's like in a deep hypnosis anyway, and he finally winds up, coming to be with her and everything. And she essentially just wants to. It almost reminded me of, and it's terrible to say, it's almost like it's Star Trek the motion picture with Ilea and Decker coming together. You know what I mean? At the very end with the light, they're merging with V'ger. It's almost like that, where she's trying to like suck the energy out of him, but then he's becoming part of her, and then you have this energy tunnel that's going up into the sky through the cathedral. How appropriate!
It's over the top. Yeah, up into the phallic umbrella.
Right. It's just
it was kind of like the final program too. Remember we did the final program?
Yes, I do remember that. And I'm surprised that wasn't the final program.
I know. This was kind of a throwback to the movies of that era, I think, from the 60s. They could have made this in the 60s.
Oh yeah, easily. Definitely 70s, if not 60s. This definitely.
They couldn't have. Well, maybe they could have gotten away with some of it. They were starting to loosen up a little bit in the 60s with the nudity and what have you, but the effects wouldn't have been the same.
No. The Hague is saying, "Oh my God, the beginning where the astronauts are flying through the ship was taken right out of Star Trek: The Motion Picture." Oh, there you go. Yeah. So while all this is going on, you've got Peter Firth who's going after him, and it's hysterical because then what happens is when he gets to the cathedral, he meets up with the one guy. Well, actually, you know what? The one thing I did skip, I got to go back, is he meets up with Frank Finlay, and who essentially tells him this whole thing, this whole motivation. And he's describing, like we were saying earlier, about how they came to the earth years ago, hundreds of years ago, and this is like a cycle. And as far as being able to kill them, the only way you can kill them is with a sword, through almost right through, not through the heart, but it was below where it separates the life force, the essence, and, that gives life. And then what happens is you're wondering if he's good or bad, or if he's been affected. And then he starts to twitch, and you're like, oh God. And you don't know if he's gonna go after Peter Firth or not. And I think Firth even says, tells him to stay away. And then that's when I think he shoots him. And then what happens is he starts decomposing, and right when he's starting to decompose, this is where it's almost like a comedy routine. He goes, "Oh, here we go," and then boom.
Well, yeah, because he's been it's his whole life's mission to find out what goes on after death, and he was
right.
So he's saying, "Oh, at last, here it comes," or whatever. He's ready for his amazing adventure,
his journey.
Yeah.
But so then what happens is then Firth goes after to find the Colonel. And when he gets to the cathedral, he's met with one of the two remaining male vampires that were discovered in the ship. And what does he say to him, Ross? He says, "It'll be easier if you just come to me." And then he goes, "Here I come," or something like that. And he has the sword, and he, pretty much sticks it to him, no pun intended.
Like it'll be a lot less unpleasant or something.
Right.
If you come to me, if you don't make me come down there or something like that. Right? You kids. Yeah.
So then with all of that, what happens is he makes his way into the cathedral with everything going on. And again, you've got the funnel, and he looks down, and as he's looking down into the pit, almost like, the pit, of hell, you've got the Colonel and the space girl, and they're pretty much naked, and she's trying to merge with him, so to speak. And you got Firth who's calling out to him, trying to get his attention, and he's not looking up.
He's occupied.
Yeah, he's occupied at the moment. And then finally what happens is he does get his attention, and then what he does is he throws him the sword. And what the Colonel does is he takes the sword and he not only impales the space girl, but he impales himself.
Right.
And to break and end the cycle.
Because we're not getting the point. Yeah.
No,
we literally get it now. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, interesting. Don's commenting. He's saying, if you look closely at the end, I believe there are now 4 bodies in the crystal, similar to last week's Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. Carlson is now one of them. I did not catch that, actually. So with all of that, all this energy that was going up and into the ship eventually stops. And then all the remains, all these zombies that are in the streets just fall and just die because there's nothing left. And the ship that's up in space that was doing this just sails away. And this is what Don is referring to in regards to, the 4 crystals being there. And what happens then? The movie ends.
Yeah, very, very abruptly too.
Very abruptly.
Henry Mancini goes right into that, concluding music. Yeah. Before you can think about it, let's just roll the credits. Yeah. Well, like last week, we were going into the subtext of Don't Be Afraid of the Dark and how it was kind of like quashing, the Kim Darby character's, spirit. Like anytime she tried to assert herself, it had all the stuff about, tamping down the feminist impulse.
Right.
This movie is another one where it's kind of like, well, what are they saying here? And I mean, the monster is a naked woman. It's like she's the femininity is the terror in this movie. Granted, they're naked male vampires too, but they seem almost to be subservient. They're not really major players in the movie. Granted, they're blown to pieces at the beginning and kind of come back together again later in the film. But she's the menace.
She is the menace. And what's interesting too is when the Colonel is saying, what are you? And he's trying to find out. Essentially, it comes out that she is a product of his mind of what he almost thinks the perfect woman would be.
Right. Because in reality, those pterodactyls.
Right. That's essentially what she is. She is one of those pterodactyls.
The hottest pterodactyl in space. Or at least in Halley's Comet. Yeah.
Exactly. Hey, I see Mateo's joining us. Mateo, welcome to the show. Great to see you out there. And Mateo's commenting saying this book was based on Colin Wilson. Yes, thanks for sharing that, Mateo. Yeah, we've been talking about Colin Wilson.
Yeah, I want to read it. I want to see what this is about. Yeah,
definitely, just to find out if what the similarities and differences are. But it'll be interesting. I mean, as we were commenting to Mateo earlier, Colin Wilson was not happy with this film at all, and he felt it was one of the worst films he saw, unfortunately.
They should make it into a flip book. I would like that.
I remember those. Phil saying, wasn't Species more in the vein, Ross?
Species, yeah.
Goodness.
I never saw the whole movie, but I know what it is. Yeah,
I remember that film. I don't know if I saw the whole thing.
I caught a few seconds of it on TV. I think I don't know if it was 80s or 90s. It might have been 90s.
No, I don't think it was 90s.
Really?
Well, maybe it was.
I saw it in the 2000s.
Okay.
So, I mean, not the whole thing.
I can't remember if I saw that in the theater or not, though.
Yeah, I didn't see it. Yeah. But so the critics, they were just like slack-jawed when this came out. Yeah. It's like Janet Maslin of the New York Times called it vampire porn. Leonard Maltin said it was so bizarre it's fascinating. And Gene Siskel called it a guilty pleasure and gave it 3 out of 4 stars.
You go, Gene. Gene must have loved that 7 minutes of the movie. Oh, shoot. Phil's saying I'm with Gene. You can't make it up. But now, in regards, we were talking about earlier. I'm going to share the screen if I can. I don't know if I can share the screen. I think it's going to be stuck for 7 minutes. Oh, there we go. We were talking about Toby Hooper earlier, though, and just the films that he made. In Texas Chainsaw Massacre being, I guess he collaborated with that film with Kim Herkel and was a co-writer on the film. But one of his most known works.
Did you see that with me or not? I saw it at the Midnight Movies. Okay.
No, I did not. Actually, Ross, I never saw that movie in its entirety. I've only seen bits and pieces of it.
It's actually, I haven't seen it for 30 years now, but it's actually very well done. And there's no gore in it. It has such a reputation, but you don't really see anything. It's just it's mostly just suggestion.
Which is, what? And for a horror movie, sometimes that's a lot better. I mean, when we were talking about Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, there was no blood and guts in any of that movie.
Who knows? Maybe I would hate it now, but back then I thought, wow, that was pretty good. And to think that Poltergeist was 82.
Yeah,
and
it was only 3 years before this movie.
Yeah, but even Texas Chainsaw Massacre seemed like it was 1,000 years ago, but it wasn't, that much before. It was maybe 9 years before Poltergeist or something.
But it's like we've always say on this show, it's the time frame back then,
right?
The years. It's like if it's 10 years back then, it almost feels like it could have been 30.
It was 8 years. It was 74, so it was only 8 years before Poltergeist came out. Yeah, which means Spielberg would have approached him, maybe 6 years, after Texas Chainsaw, and he did the TV movie of Salem's Lot.
Yeah, he did that in 79, and 77 he did Eaten Alive. But Salem's Lot we were actually going to cover on this show too, and we will. I know John the Hague was actually asking about that because he's pretty much enjoys that movie. And John, we were actually very close to doing that, but we're going to save that for next. We're going to save that for next year.
We're kicking it around. Yeah.
But
I would have liked to have done it. Maybe I haven't seen it though since it was on. So maybe
no, I haven't either.
Maybe it'll turn out to be another Martian Chronicles.
Oh, there you go. Vince is saying 90s, and he's saying Natasha Henstridge.
Oh, okay. So that's Species, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't. Thanks, Vince, for pointing that out. Mateo is also commenting. He said he also wrote sci-fi novels like The Mind Parasites too. Mm-hmm. And Brendan is saying he really liked that too. And Don is saying so prolific. I believe he wrote over 150 books. And Mateo is saying same here. And Colin is agreeing. Great series, Salem's Lot. Yeah, that was. I believe it was a 2-parter when that came out, and that was really, really well done. Brennan is also commenting. Most of Colin Wilson's work was in nonfiction, but he also wrote extensively about crime, sex, psychology, and the occult, and was a very interesting person, very philosophical, and worth reading. So good to know. Thanks for sharing that, Brennan. And let me see here. And then Mateo saying Michael Butterworth published a book about Colin Wilson. Oh, that's interesting because Michael Butterworth associated with the Space 1999 novels, as I believe also Doctor Who, if I'm not mistaken, Mateo, right?
All roads. Yeah.
All roads, yeah. Christian is saying so true. The 70s lasted like forever. Even I never get bored. Yeah, it's true. And Vince is saying Species 90s, Natasha Henstridge. Thanks again, Vince, for pointing that out. God, it's crazy. Even the 90s is like 30 years ago now. What the heck?
That's okay. I never experienced it the first time. It's a big chunk back then where I was like Buck Rogers.
Frozen.
I emerged again in the 21st century.
Yeah. There you go. And Ross, in regards to music, Henry Mancini.
Yeah. Oh my I forgot we have this to go through, and I really didn't look too much into it because they're such known composers. But Henry Mancini, the Pink Panther is what everybody thinks of immediately.
Of yeah,
you have the long association with Blake Edwards. They did Peter Gunn, Days of Wine and Roses. Victor Victoria. In fact, he won his Oscars all, based on his associations with Blake Edwards with Breakfast at Tiffany's. He won the Academy Award for the song Moon River, and I believe also the score for Breakfast at Tiffany's. He won for the song Days of Wine and Roses from the film, and he won for the score for Victor Victoria. But he was nominated for 18 Academy Awards over the course of his career. He was nominated for 72 Grammys. Jeez. And he won 20 times. I don't know if you remember, Mancini did countless albums, and they weren't just film music. They were, kind of lounge music and, kind of almost easy listening music, some of them.
Right.
So he did a lot of that stuff. His early career, before he became a name, he was working on films like Creature from the Black Lagoon and Tarantula, and he wouldn't even really get credit. They wouldn't even mention him in the, because it'd be these things where there were multiple composers working on the various cues of the movies. But of course, he broke out in the television and film in the 50s and 60s, and he did a lot of, stuff like Touch of Evil. A lot of them had popular, elements to them, dance music and, Latin rhythms and so forth. But he did orchestral scores like this one. This is kind of an unusual score. We don't think of Mancini as like the big, operatic post John Williams kind of sound, but this is really a big orchestral score with the London Symphony Orchestra. They even get credit, right there in the opening credits, Henry Mancini and the London Symphony Orchestra.
Exactly.
Yeah. But for some reason, and apparently in the European cut, they kept his score, but for some reason, when it got released in the United States, certain cues were scored by Michael Kamen. And, Michael Kamen, I don't really associate him with avant-garde music at all, but apparently he was responsible for some of the more avant-garde cues in the movie. I didn't really notice that. Interestingly, Entrada Records has put out just this month or last month has come out with 2 CDs of Lifeforce. One of them has the Mancini score and one of them has the Kamen score. And they're probably still available. So if you're interested, Google that. But Michael Kamen is known for, he did Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He did the Die Hard movies. He did Mr. Holland's Opus. He was an oboist to start. He studied at Juilliard. He became involved with orchestrating for rock bands. He did Pink Floyd's The Wall. He worked with them on that. Sadly, he was, had a pretty good career as a film composer, but sadly he was diagnosed with MS in 1997, and he died only 55 years old. He died in 2003.
Oh God.
Yeah. So, I guess James Horner had been approached at some point to do the music, maybe before Mancini, but he didn't. He might have been too busy, or I don't know.
That would have been interesting. I could see Horner doing the music.
Yeah, I could see it too. But I'm glad that Mancini did it.
Yeah.
But I do miss Kamen. I miss Horner too. We don't have anybody writing melodic scores anymore in the movies. Yeah, it's all sound design, all computers, and
everything changes.
Everything changes. It's cheaper. It's cheaper just to mess around on a computer than it is to get somebody to orchestrate and record, hire an orchestra and record it. And
right.
Yeah. So anyway, on that downbeat note, that's who these composers are. And I'm sure everybody's familiar with Mancini, if not Kamen, but, I'm sure you've heard a lot of his work. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Ross. Sure. Some follow-up comments. Matt commented, in regards to the film, he's saying, I feel that this movie is much closer to Frankenstein. The males all seem to be maladjusted male adolescents who come in contact with a potential partner and can't process giving up a portion of their identity. The ending is the hope for the future, wherein the complete sacrifice is capable of ushering in the new.
Oh, here we go. Here come all the term papers.
No, but
it's good. It's insightful.
That's very insightful, Matt. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Don commented, he said, I have a comment in regards to the music scores. I have a combo set with some of the Kamen tracks, but they're more of a curiosity. I'm mostly there for the Mancini, and it looks like Intrada just released an even more complete set of both composers for Lifeforce. So there goes more of my money.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So Google it if you're interested. They may yet be available. All those things are always limited edition. You know, they print limited to like 5,000 copies or what have you. I don't know what the numbers are on that. Yeah, Brazil, Lethal Weapon.
Now Brazil, that's the movie with with Sir Laurence Olivier, right?
No, you're thinking of Marathon.
Boys from Brazil.
Oh, Boys from Brazil. Brazil's the one with Jonathan Pryce. It's a Terry Gilliam.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a different movie.
It's the 1984 knockoff. Yeah.
Came and did the score for Iron Giant.
Iron Giant, right. That was another big one. Yeah.
Christian St. Jonathan Pryce. Yep.
Right.
Gotcha. So, and let me see. I don't think I missed anybody on that. So I just wanted to make sure I didn't. But yeah. Oh, and then Brennan's saying my favorite Kamen score is Die Hard. Most of the movie is a different variation of Beethoven's Ninth. Yeah, that was another good film. No, but all in all, though, I mean, I think we pretty much hit the marks with Lifeforce. I mean, like we were saying earlier, I personally enjoyed this movie more so than I did back in the theater. But just watching this, though, it's crazy. And again, I don't mean to go on about it. I mean, this film was 37 years ago. It's
that is crazy. Yeah.
That blows my mind.
It doesn't seem like that much time has passed. And yeah, this was like one of those things where, you know, it was kind of like a joke bet kind of thing. You know, it's like, all right, we're going to do Lifeforce. And it's like, you know, it's funny that we're going to do Lifeforce, but I really don't want to do Lifeforce.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not a well enjoyed movie. I mean,
but then I watched it and I said, hey, this is pretty good.
Yeah, it was entertaining. And all jokes aside about Mathilda May, but I mean, just putting that component of the side of it.
Well, she wasn't bad, you know. No, she wasn't. I mean, could you play that role?
I thought she was convincing.
Yeah, you think about playing that role. Could you do it?
No, I wouldn't want to do it, nor would anybody want to see me do that.
Get to kiss Patrick Stewart.
His first on-screen kiss, and what happens? He kisses Steve. Oh boy, that's too funny. But anyway, yeah. So it was a fun month. It was fun to do. I mean, again, this has been an ongoing joke back and forth about this film too. So
yeah. Well, now we've done it.
Now we've done it, and now we've done it.
we can put this one away.
Just like Haley's comment for another 37 years, although that was 70.
Yeah, right.
We'll talk about that in another 37 years.
All right.
There we go. So anyway, if you have any last minute comments that you want to comment on, please do so. And what I'm going to do for now is go to the shout out portion of the show.
I am curious what women think of the movie. You know, if anybody's seen it, you know, if you think it's just garbage, you know, if it's exploitation, or if you looked at it and you were entertained by it and found, you know, any of these themes valid that we were talking about, or that any of the comments honed in on.
No, and I think that's a really good comment.
Or if we're obscured by we're blinded by our desire, just like the males in the film.
the L'Oreal signal, as in from Star Trek animated series, where the women are hypnotizing, or the siren, like the siren.
Oh, right.
Yeah, sirens.
That's the one where Uhura becomes the captain.
Yes, she takes command of the Enterprise.
Right.
Anyway, I want to give a shout out to our friends Mike and Mary Beth at Sci-Fi Distilled. They are on Wednesday nights, and they discuss films and television of the 80s, 90s, and beyond. They will be on this Wednesday, coming back on October 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and they will be discussing the 1997 film Event Horizon. That's a film I've never seen, Ross. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. I heard it gets kind of rough.
Does it? Okay.
I don't know though. You know what? I'm a wuss though. You know?
We'll have to go back and check it out. So
anyway, it's got a good cast. Yeah.
Who's in it? I don't even know.
Sam Neill, I think, is in it.
Yes, you know what? You're right, because I
And,
actually did look it up to find out the year, and I
yeah,
saw that.
there are a bunch of name actors in it. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Phil. Yes, watching Roy and Ross and Roy had and on a large screen TV in high def has me convinced the future is fantastic.
Oh
Matt's saying
man.
it's a good film, and Dennis is saying Ross would be correct. Lots of laughs. Anyway, so yeah, check out Mike and Mary Beth on Sci-Fi Distilled Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to Countrygate Players Countrygate Theater in Belvedere, New Jersey. First off, you can visit Facebook, the Facebook page, which is Countrygate. And then also you can go to their website, which is www.countrygate.org. And then also you can go to our friend Bill Scarrato, who's actually out there at www.billscarrato.com. Bill is the owner of Countrygate. And as everybody knows, this year has been a rough year because of COVID, and things are just starting to come back to normal. There's only actually been one official theater show that was done this season. However, Bill came up with doing different types of film festivals that was done in July, and now coming up for the month of October. In fact, starting tomorrow, October 8th, he is going to be having a showing of Night of the Living Dead, which is the classic 1968 George Romero film. And that will again be at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Then the following Saturday, which is going to be next Saturday, will be October 15th with Nosferatu, which we're talking about vampires. And this is actually a 1922 film, which is a 100-year-old film being celebrated actually this year. So that will be be shown next week. The following week is going to be on October 22nd at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Little Shop of Horrors. And this is the 1960 film. This is the original film. This is not the comedy. This is, I guess you would say it is more a horror and
It's still a comedy. Still
horror. It's not a musical. That's what I
it's
should
not the
say.
musical. Yeah.
It's not the musical. Yeah, but it is. It's kind of horror comedy. And
Yeah.
then the big one is going to be on October 29th, and this is going to be at 8 p.m. And then also that's on Saturday. And then on Sunday, October 30th at 2 p.m. And what I'd like to say is it's going to be, and as Bill's been saying, it's going to be Mystery Science Fiction Theater 3000 meets Rocky Horror. So it's going to be a showing of the classic, and I say classic, I mean classic, and it's Plan 9 from Outer Space. And as we all know, science fiction fans out there, this is the film that was done by writer, director, producer Ed Wood, and it actually had won the Golden Turkey Award for, well, we won't go there, but we know what it won. And he's going to be celebrating a showing of the film, and there will be Countrygate players that will be a part of this on stage and partaking in the festivities of watching this film. So it's going to be a fun time. It's going to be a wonderful way to celebrate the Halloween season with all these movies. And then, of course, with the final taking place on that weekend. So if you are in the Belvedere, New Jersey area, definitely come and check it out. It will be a lot of fun. And again, you can go to www.billscarrato.com or www.countrygate.org for details. And then also, Captain Phil is out there tonight, our friend, at WUSB 90.1 FM, Stony Brook, New York. Captain Phil's Planet is on alternating Thursdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And then he's also on Friday nights from 9 to 11:30 p.m. Phil's saying he was preempted this week. If it's safe to turn on the radio, I'll be back on October 20th with some new music. So definitely check out Captain Phil at those times. And again, it's WUSB 90.1 FM, Stony Brook, New York. And thanks, Bill. Glad you enjoyed the show tonight too, of course. And then next, I want to give a shout out to friends Todd Morton and Gordon Moriguchi for Todd's Corner. They are still on hiatus. They are going to be returning sometime on Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So stay tuned. Todd also broadcasts on Facebook as well as YouTube. And as soon as we have information as far as when they're going to be resuming, we will let you know. So stay tuned in regards to that. And also, I want to give a shout out to our friends at Studio One Thrift, and this is going to be Snow and Martha. And they actually started just a few months ago featuring a live broadcast on Facebook. And they are looking to be expanding onto YouTube as well, and maybe even potentially Twitter with their broadcasts. Now, what they are is they are the owners of the Studio One Thrift. And what they do is they showcase their line of merchandise for all seasons, which is showcased all year long. So you can find quality, stylish, affordable clothing for men and women. Now, to find out information about what they offer, you can go to their website, which is www.studio1thrift.com. And I definitely wanted to give them a shout out because they've really been trying to put a lot of effort into this, and they've been expanding and just getting the word out. And the merchandise that they actually have is really nice and it's affordable. And again, also, you can check them out if you go to the website. Also on Facebook, if you check their, again, look for Studio One Thrift, they actually do programs in which they'll showcase the clothing for men and women. So definitely look into that. And Ross, if you can let everybody know what you've got going on this weekend.
All right. Well, these are the two shows I've got on WWFM, the Classical Network. Picture Perfect's the movie music show, and that's tomorrow night at 6. And tomorrow I'll be focusing on music from movies about explorers and exploration. Since one, we're coming up on Columbus Day on Monday, but also it's the birthday on Wednesday of Ralph Vaughan Williams, who's one of the great English composers. So I'm playing music from his Scott of the Antarctic that had John Mills. I mentioned John Mills was one of the Quatermass actors, but he played Robert Falcon Scott on the race to the South Pole. And Vaughan Williams wrote the film score for that, and later reworked it as his Symphony No. 7, Symphonia Antarctica. So I'll be playing excerpts from that score, but also a film about Christopher Columbus with Frederick March. Sir Arthur Bliss was the composer for that. The Adventures of Marco Polo had Gary Cooper in it. Hugo Friedhofer is the composer. And a short film made by National Geographic called Lewis and Clark, Great Journey West. And the composer for that was Sam Carden. So I'm doing all of that tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. It turns out it's the Vaughan Williams weekend. His sesquicentenary is coming up on Wednesday, 150th anniversary since his birth. So the Lost Chord on Sunday night, unusual and neglected classical music, is all Vaughan Williams also. And I'm focusing on recordings that he himself made as a conductor of his own music. So I have a recording of the Wasps Overture from 1925, a recording of his Symphony No. 4 from 1937, and the Serenade to Music from 1951. And that program is called Vaughan, But Not Forgotten, music of Ralph Vaughan Williams for his sesquicentenary, Sunday night at 10 on the Lost Chord. If you can't catch the programs at the times listed here, they will be posted on the website, wwfm.org, as webcasts later in the week. And I'll be writing about those programs. Tomorrow morning, I'll write about the Picture Show, the Picture Perfect, and then on Sunday morning, I'll be writing about the Lost Chord. In fact, you can count probably on a lot of Vaughan Williams on my Facebook page this week at Classic Ross Amico. Thanks, Roy.
Oh, very cool. Thanks, Ross.
Yeah.
All righty, folks. So as we are venturing deeper and deeper into Halloween month, we will be back to continue this next Friday. And Ross and I will be discussing for our episode 164, the classic, the movie, the horror film, The Omen, made back in 1976, starring Gregory Peck and Lee Remick. So we are very excited to be talking about this film.
And David Warner.
Yes, absolutely. And Billy Whitelaw. In fact, this movie was a toss-up. We were going back and forth in regards to either doing this or The Exorcist.
And I wanted to do The Exorcist.
Yeah, and I did too, but The Exorcist will be celebrating its 50th anniversary next year. So we're going to kind of hold off until that, which I can't believe The Exorcist is going to be 50 years old. That itself is crazy. So
I can believe it.
Anyway, we will be discussing that. We will revisit that next year. But anyway,
Captain Howdy.
We will be doing this classic. And then I'm happy to say the following week, for our next episode, which is going to be on Friday, October 21st, we will be talking about the classic 1968 zombie film by George A. Romero, which is Night of the Living Dead. And I'm very happy to say that our special guest, host that's going to be on with us is Bill Scarrato, who's out there tonight from Country Gate Theater. So Bill will be joining us to talk about this, and it's only appropriate too because this is going to be the opening of the film festival taking place at Country Gate tomorrow. So thought we would tie in and bring that through. So we're looking forward to having Bill back on the show. Bill actually did the second episode of this show back in the day when it first premiered back in April of 2020. So, and we talked about the Twilight Zone. So very, very much looking forward to having you back on, Bill. So that will be the 21st, and that'll be in 2 weeks. And then lastly, as we come to a conclusion for Halloween month on the show, we will be on Friday, October 28th, discussing the classic 1966 series, The Munsters. And this is going to be a special crossover episode as we're going to welcome our friends Mike and Mary Beth from Sci-Fi Distilled. As we always do, we've been doing it as a tradition for our annual crossover for Halloween. So we will be getting dressed and we will be partaking in discussion in regards to the Munsters. So we're going to go a little lighter with the Munsters, but it's always been a favorite as far as television shows, and what better way to end Halloween month with the Munsters. So that'll be in 3 weeks, folks. And then lastly, I just want to remind everybody, and I want to thank everybody for your support of the show. And I also just want to remind everybody that the show, again, is being broadcast on Facebook, which we are on right now, but we also are broadcasting on YouTube as well as Twitter. So if you can take the opportunity, if you haven't done so already, if you can please make sure to like the show's page. And then also in regards to YouTube, if you can please subscribe if you haven't. And then also even subscribe on Twitter if you have a Twitter account. Again, there is no cost associated with this. It is totally free, but your likes and your subscriptions are valuable, and we really, really appreciate it. And then also, if you're happy to share the show too, and just spread the word about it, because we're just trying to expand our viewership. And again, thank everybody that has been a part of this and either watches it live or watches it in its pre-record. We really, really do appreciate it. And again, also please feel free to post reviews as well too. We welcome them. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and come back. So yeah, I thought this was a fun night, Ross. We got to talk about vampires and Mathilda May and Patrick Stewart. Not necessarily in that order.
I think I'm going as Mathilda May this year for Halloween. Did you get any comments? I'm interested in the female perspective on this movie. If anybody said anything, probably not. And probably have crickets. They all checked out right at the beginning of the show, probably. Yeah.
No, but you know what though? If they circle back later on and watch it during the pre-record, they can always comment then. But I'm actually not seeing anything, and I don't see. I know Jennifer was out there, and I don't see any comments.
Yeah, they're long gone.
Yeah,
we're out of here.
Or Linda too.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Bob Eggleton is joining us here. Bob, I didn't see you were out there. Bob, welcome.
Everybody gets the Quatermass connection. Yeah.
Yeah, he's joining us from Rhode Island. Thanks for being out there, Bob. And I'm sorry, I just saw your comment now. So welcome to the show, and good to see you out there too. But no, I don't, Ross. So
yeah, it's. What are you going to say?
Question.
Yeah, it's very interesting to look at it from this perspective, because when I was watching it, it was just a letdown in '85. But now I look back at it, and it's kind of like in the category, if not exactly the quality of like Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Pulp Fiction, where it goes back and takes like this earlier genre that was explored 20, 30 years before, and makes it something new. It's kind of like a postmodern take on the Quatermass movies or the Hammer films. It takes all. It's like putting new wine in old bottles or what have you. Like Star Wars was kind of a recycled all the Flash Gordon tropes and the westerns and the samurai films and everything.
No, that's a great point. And I always loved the Hammer films too.
Yeah, I mean, where else are you going to get an apocalyptic vampire zombie body horror? What have you? Space movie.
That about sums it up. Eyes, rusty eyes. Anyway, before we go. Any last words, Ross?
I think I spoke them. I think it's enough.
Well, everybody, thank you so much. We wish everybody a very happy weekend and a safe weekend. Enjoy the weather. Actually, we've been through a lot of rain in the Northeast, and our viewers that, especially that have been down in Florida, have been through a lot too. So we're hoping everybody's doing well and safe down there. And we actually just came back into sunshine just the last day or so. So it's been nice. But anyway, until next time, live long and prosper. And we'll see you next week.
Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.